Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. This is Katannya Alven, and I've got some pretty breaking news, actually. You'll see the video, and it says Dave E. Martin, speaker, author, fully human, beautiful. And the title is, You're Under House Arrest as a Result of a Crime Committed by the US CDC on February the 17th, 2014 that you paid for. All right, okay. So we're going to open this.
Monday, April 27th, and we are in for our next installment of Butterfly of the Week. And as always, producing this episode is Kim.
Me. Hello everyone, welcome. Glad you could join us. Today, of course, is going to be amazing, as they always are. Please send your questions in and we'll get them answered and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Today, people, I look a little different, and that is because in the past, when I have done the investigations that ultimately give rise to legal actions that I have succeeded bringing against a number of entities around the world, I think it's appropriate that we have a certain decorum about how we engage when we are actually making very serious and very contemplated allegations in this case and reporting on some criminal activity. And as a result of this video is also going to be submitted to a number of U.S. attorneys, to the Attorney General, to other law enforcement agencies, and as a result, and in honor and respect for their roles and their posts, I think it's appropriate that we bring an appropriate level of decorum to the process. The second thing is, I have some notes here. And the reason I have notes is because I'm going to make very precise statements. And these statements are not things to take lightly. They are actually extremely serious. They are allegations, and they are allegations that are based on the facts that I'm going to be presenting. As a result of that, you're going to see me look at my notes because I take this matter very, very seriously. I need to set the stage for where we're going. At the end of this, I'm going to make a series of allegations of violations of both the United States Constitution, a series of civil and criminal acts that have been engaged around the entire COVID-19 pandemic fear-mongering and scare tactics, and I'm going to be specific in naming individuals and organizations that are at least implicated, if not directly involved, in the conspiracy that I'm laying out. So let's set the stage a little bit with some laws that are not necessarily commonly known.
I've just paused a moment, and on the email that I got, it says here, last week we saw a video featuring Dr. Rashid Buttar, in which he reminded us that after the US federal case resulted in a moratorium on the weaponization of SARS coronavirus in the US, so SARS coronavirus in the US, and in order to protect the CDC's patent of SARS, Anthony Fauci oversaw a $3.7 million grant given to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for it to illegally develop the very same novel coronavirus that has since culminated in his forceful and repeated recommendations to shut down the global economy. Now, as far as I recall, wait a minute, let me just pull this down before I bring Dr. Martin. Dr. Buttar also reminded us that Fauci, through the NIAID, owns a 50% share in the patent on a protein made from HIV that helps to more efficiently deliver vaccine material throughout the body. This patent is being used by some of the companies now developing vaccines for the coronavirus. Therefore, NIAID, through Fauci, has both financial and development of the virus behind the pandemic, and it will collect half the royalties on its eventual vaccine, Remember, it said not pandemic, plandemic. Right, we'll go on here. If this isn't racketeering of the most head-spinning and depraved sort, I don't know what is, the writer writes. When a friend called me up last week to say he and some friends might put together a RICO case, I wasn't surprised. It's time to get legal on their ass. And inventor, author, financier, and futurist Dr. David E. Martin, who you've just heard speak there, and you'll hear again, has done just that by submitting a request for an investigation into possible antitrust violation to the Office of the Inspector General for the United States Department of Health and Human Service on April the 22nd, 2020. And he has drafted a potential antitrust case against HHS, CDC, NIAID, so that's HHS, and then CDC and NIAID, etc., of which this video is an exhibit. Citizens of the United States of America versus United States Department of Health and Human Services Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Robert R. Redfield et al. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Anthony Stephen Fauci et al. Governors of all states issuing executive orders abridging the First Amendment of the Constitution, University of North Carolina, Capitol Hill, Professor Ralph Barrett et al., and unknown parties. Now, we'll bring this gentleman back again. Wonderful. Oh, well, wait a minute. Back here. Dr. Martin writes. Now, he's going to speak this part out, but it's there. When you go into the description box, remember it's there, all right? And the other thing, before we continue, in the description box, you will find a link for the Capstone experience and also for the Live Success Now. Do look at those seriously because it wakes you up. It really helps you wake up. And had I not had that experience with the Delfin knowledge system, with the laws of the universe, with understanding actually the power I have and that we all have, I would not be doing this. Okay, so you will leap into greater capabilities when you start working with personal empowerment courses. This is really quite special, so do go on there and have a look anyway. We're coming back to Dr. Martin.
So let's set the stage a little bit with some laws that are not necessarily commonly known. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the United States Constitution, and as it is manifest in the 35 U.S. Code, is the law that gives rise to intellectual property, the right for somebody, an inventor or an author, to have access to their inventions for a period of time for commercial exploitation. That is a constitutional right granted under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the United States Constitution. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 is an interesting clause that you don't hear about very much, but it's actually something that is a presumption not only in the United States Constitution, but in most of the civilized world, and that is the writ of habeas corpus. Now, what does habeas corpus mean? That means that there is a recourse in the law when someone has been placed in confinement, and when that confinement is either unjustified or inappropriate.
That's us. We have been placed in refinement. We have all, barring, I think, Sweden isn't under lockdown, and there are a few other islands in the Pacific, I gather. This is shocking. It's shocking beyond really being able to grasp the shockingness of it without understanding these constitutional laws that you, dear Americans, have got. Britain has got a constitution, but it's as I understand it, it's an unwritten constitution, and it actually goes back to the Magna Carta. And George Galloway is also actually, I heard on one of his videos that he was setting up a case against the British government. And I must send him this information and get more information as to what he's actually, how far he's gone forward. On with this.
Habeas corpus under the Constitution, under Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, cannot be suspended, and it cannot be suspended in the absolute sense of this. This, by the way, is something that is alluded to in Attorney General William Barr's memo dated today, released just a few hours ago. Now, those are constitutional provisions. What I'm also going to lay out are two very important other provisions.
I will try and find that memo and put it in the description box, but if I don't, please go and find it yourself. This is very important. We really are fighting for our lives.
Level of decorum to the process. The second thing is, I have some notes here, and the reason I have notes is because I'm going to make very precise habeas corpus. Now, what does habeas corpus mean? That means that there is a recourse in the law when someone has been placed in confinement.
That's the writ of habeas corpus, when somebody has, in this case, when somebody is being placed in confinement.
And when that confinement is either unjustified or inappropriate. Habeas corpus under the Constitution, under Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, cannot be suspended, and it cannot be suspended in the absolute sense of this. This, by the way, is something that is alluded to in Attorney General William Barr's memo dated today, released just a few hours ago. Now, those are constitutional provisions. What I'm also going to lay out are two very important other provisions that come out of the turn of the last century, most of them in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And those two provisions are called the Sherman Act, which is 15 U.S. Code Section 1 and following, and the Sherman Act, which was amended with the thing called the Clayton Act in 1914. And I just want to make reference to three provisions inside of the Sherman and Clayton Act. Combined, these represent what's called the Antitrust Act of the United States. 15 U.S. Code Section 1 actually makes it illegal for anything that is a conspiracy and restraint of trade or commerce among the states with foreign nations, and any of those actions are declared illegal. Every person who shall make a contract or engage in a combination or conspiracy is declared to be illegal and shall be deemed guilty of a felony. And I made reference to the fact that this is criminal and civil allegations. The criminal allegations are given rise from the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act.
Right. This is the end of part 1. Please go on to part 2 and watch more of this. It's very, very important, because unless we wake up and really grasp the shockingness of what has been perpetrated on virtually the entire world, either we're going to wake up and stand up for our rights and freedom of speech and freedoms of movement, or otherwise this planet will be completely taken over by the dark, the grey, whatever you want to call it, the dark colours of those that have not our best interest at heart. This is Katannya Alven, just pausing for a moment while we go on to the next part 2 video.